What if I told you that while you were scrolling through TikTok, the most influential financial institution on earth just silently rewrote the rules of money forever? And they didn't even bother to make headlines about it. The World Bank just detonated a financial earthquake that's going to reshape how every dollar, euro, and peso moves across borders. This isn't some dusty policy document buried in bureaucratic jargon. It's a strategic blueprint declaring that the planet's most powerful monetary authority has officially chosen the infrastructure for tomorrow's financial system. And here's the kicker. They specifically called out Ripple and Stellar as the foundational models. They didn't dance around with vague blockchain references. They positioned central bank digital currencies as mission-critical infrastructure. They declared ISO 20022 as the mandatory communication protocol for global interoperability. And they acknowledged that digital public infrastructure represents the solution to cross-border settlement bottlenecks that have plagued the system for decades. This marks the inflection point where everything transforms. Not theoretical exploration, not sandbox experimentation, but policy-driven implementation. And if you're holding XRP or XLM, you're not just positioned early, you're embedded within the next generation financial architecture before the mainstream even realizes the transformation is already happening. In their groundbreaking publication titled Central Bank Digital Currencies for Cross-Border Payments, the World Bank delivered an unprecedented reality check that most governments hesitate to acknowledge publicly. The existing global financial infrastructure is antiquated, inefficient, and systematically excludes approximately 1.4 billion adults worldwide, primarily concentrated in low- and middle-income regions where traditional banking remains inaccessible. The World Bank didn't merely criticize the legacy framework, they architected the replacement blueprint. They established a comprehensive roadmap for the successor system, and that successor is fundamentally digital, seamlessly interoperable, and powered by distributed ledger infrastructure. Their three foundational principles reveal the transformation: seamless interoperability transcending sovereign boundaries, regulatory compliance embedded at the protocol foundation, and instantaneous final settlement utilizing programmable infrastructure. Rather than painting abstract visions of potential futures, they referenced concrete real-world implementations already demonstrating this system's viability. Consider Project Dunbar, a bank for international settlements coordinated multi-CBDC platform successfully tested by Australia, Malaysia, Singapore, and South Africa, proving real-time settlement capabilities. Project Bridge engaged the People's Bank of China, UAE, Hong Kong, and Thailand to settle cross-border transactions via tokenized central bank currencies. Project Icebreaker, spearheaded by the BIS alongside central banks from Israel, Sweden, and Norway, demonstrated automated foreign exchange conversion between multiple retail CBDCs. But here's the statement that should have triggered seismic market reactions. Blockchain solutions like RippleNet and Stellar present promising models for cross-border interoperability and instant clearing. Let's decode this language carefully. This represents official World Bank recognition of Ripple and Stellar as foundational models for resolving the precise challenges they've identified. This isn't retail market speculation or crypto influencer hype. This constitutes the World Bank officially acknowledging Ripple and Stellar as architectural solutions for the exact infrastructure problems they're mandated to solve: fragmented liquidity pools, isolated currency systems, and expensive, time-consuming settlement mechanisms. They didn't suggest these platforms might prove useful eventually, they stated they present promising models. This represents the institutional language deployed when global authorities issue implementation directives to governments worldwide. Remember, the World Bank isn't an independent research organization. It functions as the strategic deployment mechanism for IMF and United Nations initiatives. When the World Bank communicates policy positions, developing nations respond accordingly. Central banking authorities adapt their strategies. Multilateral agencies mobilize resources and execute programs. This endorsement accomplishes more than validating Ripple and Stellar as legitimate blockchain projects. It elevates them from experimental technologies to blueprint-level infrastructure for comprehensive global monetary redesign. This development carries profound implications for XRP and XLM holders, because these tokens aren't merely speculative digital assets. They function as the native liquidity mechanisms for RippleNet and Stellar's payment networks. When the World Bank identifies RippleNet and Stellar as integral components of the solution, they're essentially declaring that XRP and XLM are embedded within the next-generation financial architecture. The fundamental question is no longer whether blockchain technology will achieve mainstream adoption. That decision has been finalized. The infrastructure rails have been selected and are actively being constructed. What follows next is systematic scaling and implementation. Once these payment corridors transition from pilot programs to official policy, And these protocols evolve from experimental testing to operational deployment. Utility demand for XRP and XLM transforms from speculative interest to economic necessity. This shift represents institutional-grade purchasing pressure, inelastic demand for settlement liquidity, and protocol-level repricing driven by systematic integration. When demand becomes inelastic, meaning it's directly tied to national settlement flows and cross-border payment requirements, price movements won't follow gradual trajectories. Instead, we'll witness violent repricing events, potentially occurring almost overnight. That repricing initiates the moment legacy systems are decommissioned and the new infrastructure goes fully operational. Ripple's evolution has been extensive, but it's finally emerging into mainstream recognition, not as a cryptocurrency project, but as fundamental infrastructure for the global financial reset. The World Bank's acknowledgement helps confirm this trajectory, and Ripple's expanding network of partnerships reads like a directory of international finance leadership. They're currently involved in over 20 CBDC pilot programs globally, with government-level partnerships spanning Bhutan, Palau, Montenegro, and Colombia, among other emerging economies. Their complete alignment with ISO 20022 standards ensures seamless integration into the global financial messaging ecosystem that processes over $150 trillion in wholesale payments annually. Here's what matters most. Ripple has constructed a dedicated CBDC platform, specialized infrastructure enabling central banks to mint and distribute digital fiat currencies, distribute them to approved intermediaries, and redeem or destroy tokens in real time. This platform enforces Know Your Customer, anti-money laundering, privacy, and compliance policies directly at the protocol layer while monitoring and adjusting liquidity through Ripple's compliance dashboard. Operating beneath this entire system, XRP serves as the native liquidity bridge. This means every time value transfers between jurisdictions, between different digital currencies, or across currency pairs, XRP potentially facilitates the settlement mechanism. This isn't theoretical possibility. This represents active infrastructure currently being tested and refined across multiple sovereign implementations. The Bank for International Settlements has directly collaborated with Ripple through regulatory sandbox projects. Ripple maintains membership in both the Digital Pound Foundation and Digital Euro Association, providing direct input into Europe's CBDC strategy development. They've even engaged with the Federal Reserve's Faster Payments Task Force, establishing relationships with U.S. monetary authorities long before cryptocurrency gained policy legitimacy. While Ripple concentrates on banking institutions and liquidity provision, Stellar and XLM are establishing themselves as the public-facing infrastructure for humanitarian aid, remittances, and financial inclusion initiatives. The World Bank has specifically recognized this positioning. Stellar has successfully delivered USDC-based aid disbursements in Ukraine, Kenya, Colombia, and numerous other regions. They've partnered with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees and MoneyGram to create compliant, instantly cashable humanitarian finance solutions. Their demonstrated capability to deploy digital public infrastructure faster than traditional banking systems can process paper-based transactions has caught multilateral attention. Here's the crucial factor. Stellar's collaboration with the UN, World Bank, and non-governmental organizations positions it at the intersection of public finance and digital delivery systems. The World Bank specifically seeks scalable, affordable payment corridors. Stellar has already constructed them. They require blockchain infrastructure supporting digital identification, instant compliance verification, and offline functionality. Stellar is currently piloting these exact capabilities. Operating behind this entire transformation is ISO 20022, the new messaging standard adopted by SWIFT, Fedwire, the European Central Bank, and over 11,000 banking institutions worldwide. Why does this matter critically? Because tokens that align with ISO 20022 standards can communicate natively with existing banking infrastructure. Both XRP and XLM demonstrate full compliance with ISO 20022 protocols. This means they can integrate directly into real-time gross settlement systems, function as bridges between different CBDCs, and plug seamlessly into tokenized asset platforms. The World Bank didn't simply recommend blockchain adoption. They specifically emphasized blockchain infrastructure that integrates with bank-grade compliance requirements. Only a handful of protocols globally satisfy all these requirements: instantaneous settlement, programmable compliance, ISO 20022 interoperability, and neutral bridge status. XRP and XLM lead this select list, which explains their specific recognition in World Bank documentation. Here's what most market participants are missing. When the World Bank signals strategic direction, it's not generating hype, it's establishing policy. That policy cascades into national regulations, private sector partnerships, and international funding channels. This isn't about short-term price speculation, it's about systematic integration into global financial infrastructure. If you're holding XRP or XLM, you're positioned within pre-approved financial infrastructure. You're holding blockchain technology that solves real institutional problems and technology that's already embedded within the emerging system. But because this transformation is occurring quietly, most retail investors remain focused on the wrong assets. The significant capital flows won't materialize until the infrastructure switch is activated. When that activation occurs, the movement will be swift and substantial. Currently, UN payment corridors on Stellar are operational. NGO aid delivery through Ripple technology is functioning. CBDC infrastructure aligned with ISO 20022 is actively processing transactions. Let's examine the broader ecosystem currently building with Ripple and Stellar. Ripple's partnerships include Mersiker, Novity, Tranglo, and Modeler, along with multiple central banking authorities. They maintain membership in the Digital Pound Foundation and Digital Euro Association while being recognized by the World Economic Forum as a leader in blockchain for digital assets. Stellar collaborates with UNHCR, MoneyGram, Circle, USDC, and the Digital Financial Services Lab. They're partners in the G20 technology sprint alongside the BIS and Saudi Arabia, and they maintain membership in ID 2020, supporting self-sovereign identity solutions on-chain. These aren't speculative arrangements. They represent live integrations with government agencies, multilateral institutions, and regulated financial partners. This ecosystem gives XRP and XLM their unique positioning. They're not awaiting adoption, they're currently being utilized in operational environments. Let's clarify one crucial point. Price action represents the final element to move during system-wide infrastructure transitions. Retail traders chase price charts, but institutions construct fundamental infrastructure. XRP and XLM have spent recent years being accumulated, tested, and deployed beneath mainstream attention while legal uncertainties, regulatory debates, and bear market conditions kept most observers distracted. Why hasn't explosive price movement occurred yet? Because the infrastructure switch hasn't achieved full activation, but it's being systematically installed in real time. What we're observing represents the calm period before massive volume influx. The underlying systems are already operational. UN payment corridors on Stellar are processing transactions. NGO aid delivery through Ripple technology is functioning. And CBDC infrastructure aligned with ISO 20022 is actively settling payments. When these systems transition from pilot programs to official policy implementation, utility demand for XRP and XLM becomes inevitable economic necessity rather than speculative investment. Utility demand doesn't resemble speculative price pumps. It manifests as institutional-grade purchasing pressure, inelastic demand for settlement liquidity, and protocol-level repricing driven by systematic integration. These assets aren't meme tokens influenced by social media trends, they're embedded into programmable money infrastructure. This is where practical application becomes crucial. While most participants debate cryptocurrency on social media platforms, institutional infrastructure is being methodically constructed, and XRP and XLM occupy central positions within this development. How should you position yourself before the infrastructure switch activates? Follow the trail of institutional adoption rather than listening to influencers. Monitor partnerships with the BIS, IMF, United Nations Development Program, and World Bank. Track central banking initiatives and observe NGOs deploying aid through blockchain infrastructure. Monitor corridor development rather than price charts. Instead of obsessing over short-term price movements, track where RippleNet and Stellar solutions are achieving operational status. Where is MoneyGram integrating blockchain infrastructure? Where is Ripple deploying CBDC pilots? Where are new payment corridors becoming operational? Think in infrastructure cycles rather than speculative cycles. Bitcoin experienced the initial hype cycle, Ethereum drove the ICO cycle, but now we're entering the infrastructure cycle. This means utility, compliance, scalability, and global integration matter more than ever before. XRP and XLM satisfy all these requirements, which explains their institutional recognition. And you guys, I have a special trick for you which nobody seems to be using, and I cannot wrap my head around why. Because if you sign up through my link down in the description onto the BTCC exchange, you get a 10% deposit bonus, and now stay with me here. Now here comes the important part. If you have any trading capital on any other exchange, and you move it to your newly created BTCC account, you get on top of your capital, you moved another 10% extra trading capital. As an example, if you move or deposit a 100K to your account, you get 10K for free. I am not kidding, I really don't understand why nobody is doing this. To me, it really seems like people sometimes are too lazy or just don't like free money. I mean, like, I cannot make that account for you, will need to that yourself. Alright, let's jump back into the video. The World Bank has issued their strategic declaration. They've confirmed what XRP and XLM holders have understood for years. Blockchain technology isn't approaching, it's already here. The financial system is being reconstructed, and Ripple and Stellar are serving as the infrastructure for that reconstruction. This isn't speculation or hopeful projection, it's established policy and operational infrastructure. The question is no longer whether this transformation will occur, it's how rapidly it will accelerate. When the complete system activates, the transition won't be gradual, it will be sudden, permanent, and irreversible. So if you're holding XRP or XLM, maintain that position with confidence. You're not speculating on market hype, you're holding programmable liquidity mechanisms. You're holding tokenized infrastructure. You're holding the fundamental components of the future monetary system. The next 12 months won't simply shift the cryptocurrency landscape, they'll redefine the global economy. You're not early to this transformation, you're strategically positioned. And soon, the rest of the world will recognize what's already operational and functioning. Ready to dive deeper into the digital financial revolution? Smash that like button if this opened your eyes to what's really happening behind the scenes, and hit subscribe. Because the next few months are going to be absolutely wild, and you don't want to miss a single update on this historic transformation.